inspire their children. Children ask questions. Subconsciously, it has an effect. When you have things, when people walk in your house, they should know that they're walking into an African American home.
I do.
That's what the things that we wanted to provide. But it had to be done in a way where we could satisfy everyone. I knew the demographics in Los Angeles and the need. I understood it nationwide. But coming out of a corporate environment, I understood the practicalities. I was a marketeer. I was a capitalist. Okay, that just happens to be black. And I knew the importance, but a lot of things had to do with education. We had to educate. We had to tell people this is a poster, this is a limited edition, and so we went about doing that in a pragmatic way. Okay, and one thing just led to the other. Then we started doing, I mean, this whole thing about moving art on the streets. I learned how to hustle the artwork on the streets in Los Angeles and Hollywood. And we went as far as Orange County, where blacks were not known to go. And we did that too. So that whole thing, I mean, you have to understand that it was so vitally important. It's not saying artists wanted to do something because they were just about themselves. We were charged with a responsibility to represent a whole nation of black people that, tell you, it wasn't happening up until the 60s. So that whole dynamic became part of our lives. And then we found out that there were artists all over the country. Then we started going to Atlanta. We started going to Washington, D.C., Kansas City. And when I was just into this thing, it became so profound and so demanding that we could barely keep up with it. You know, and it was probably the most gratifying part of my life when I was able to service my people in that way. And the rest is history. I mean, we set, in a sense, we planted seeds that would last a lifetime. And I just thank God for that opportunity to be around as an artist during that time. We call the 90s the golden age of African American art. We learned how to be self-validating artists. For a long time, you had to be validated, either by an educational institution, but we got out there in the streets and validated ourselves. Okay? And because of that, most people understood that. Now, you can call it a hustle or whatever you want to call it, a street hustle, but it was one of those hustles that was culturally necessary and viable. And that's why we did it.
Just like jazz, born out of its own struggle, the three of us. For me, I had a dilemma. When I got into the art world, I came through a couple of galleries. Spiral Gallery in Brooklyn with James Denmark. I was with Art O'Neill. These cats are fine artists. Went to school. So I cut my little teeth there. And then I got picked up to add to what, my colleagues are talking about. I got picked up. The thing that really helped put my name and our names out there probably was Things Graphic and Fine Art, an African American publishing and distribution company. And we licensed our images, 8 images to start. Posters. And from the African American art community, we opened up jobs and businesses that, like, for instance, there were many frame shops and galleries that were open all over the country because of what we were doing, because of Things Graphic distribution. Things Graphic distribution was so huge that the time it took for Bearden and Lawrence to be popular, it took us that in light speed. I mean, like that. Not only that, we created, what's the name of the group? Not the Tupperware type group. What's it called? Personal Preference. These were African American women deliberately purchasing collections of prints and having house parties. I mean, there was an insatiable appetite for our self-expression, our culture, and who we are. That these Tupperware parties made it possible to cultivate our collectors and people who have followed us up until this very second. We are, with the first time, when I licensed my work with Things Graphic, I just told you this, okay, I'll take the dollar, you know, on each one, you know, whatever. And then I turned on the TV one night, just took a break, and the Martin Show, it just came on, just came out. And all of a sudden I see Martin and Gina goes inside the bedroom. And there on the wall, one of Things Graphic, one of my images, Bob, Leroy Campbell. I said, oh my God, that's my shit! And I said, what does this mean? All of a sudden the phone started ringing. People from Charleston, hey boy, don't think we ain't got no TV down. Yeah man, we see you boy, you did it. And it's like, oh my God, so my work, my name became household from the Martin Show. Then it got picked up, put on the First Wives Club. Heat of the Night. So that marketing just made it, and at this time I'm still dealing with galleries and the three of us. Now these guys are my mentors. These two right here? I mean, these guys were teaching me how to do it for self. Because I hadn't been doing it for myself then, but they had. They had been seriously marketing the work. I went to visit him for a weekend and just warehouse. Beautiful. I mean, they were doing it. Self-employed and making accessible culture and cultivating. So when I saw that, I said, wow, that's what I want to do. Meanwhile, I'm working at the hospital and I'm a single parent, 2 kids. So, but all of a sudden, I'm like, my name is spreading around through this distribution. So I decided to produce my own one-man show. I rented a gallery in Soho. I went and studied how to do it. I had about 50 pieces. I opened the show. I took a leave of absence. On the day of the show, the job sent me a letter saying if you don't return today, you're fired. I had never lost a job. So I'm the only one with the key. So I had to open the show, open the door, let in the band, let in the caterer, and I'm like, oh my God, am I going to lose my job? So I turned away from the artwork and faced the blank wall. I said, God, what do you want me to do? And a calm came over me. I went on for the rest of the night. 800 people showed up, including Phyllis Hyman. By the end of the night, God is my witness, I made $50,000. I never looked back. I took that money and I started investing and becoming a distributor and publisher of my own work, just like how these gentlemen were doing. So I don't believe in the starving artist concept. I think it's overrated. I think that when God gives you a path and a gift that you're supposed to be on, it's not an accident. You're supposed to follow that. So here it is today, you know, the business aspect of it, you know, it's been successful. We're still, it's interesting though, because even during the 80s when Clinton was in office, holy man. We were selling so much work. Okay?
Yeah, we weren't ready for it.
We weren't ready for it, right? But now, check it out. We love painting. When we sit down to paint, neither one of these guys, including myself, are thinking about money. We love what we do. We also feed on the culture of our work. But once we finish and put a signature on it, we know how to make a commodity out of it and how to make sure we package it and respect the different levels of it. And that's our story. So here we are now looking at people who are still buying artwork, and even in this particular period, it seems like whenever things are going in a struggle, more and more people desire more art. That's an interesting segue. Why is that? Why do you think that is?
I think that nothing is new. It's always been that way. But when you have an awakening, then you become sensitized to certain things. So even though we were late in being sensitized, it's always been that way. Art has always had that allure. It's used to document our culture, our history, and everything. But we were so far removed from it, we didn't get a chance to view it from that perspective. And this new renaissance allowed us to connect in a way that many other cultures had already connected. And so, you know, if you can walk through the hall here and not be moved by one piece, I will personally buy your shovel and your plow. Because something's wrong. That means you're that disconnected from the essence of why we're here. We're not here because we decided that we were the best men on planet painting. And most of us, you won't even hear us talk about our art when we're not doing this. Okay? But the important piece is, now that you are sensitized, what do you want to do with that? Okay? If you talk about the 80s to the 90s, he was right. This thing was happening so fast, most of us didn't know what to do. Money was falling out of our pockets. We just
trying to catch up,
trying to keep up with it. It was moving so fast, you know. And then you get to the 9/11, it crashed. You're talking about the stock market, the banking industry, everything crashed. So what crashes with that? When your disposable income is gone, you focus on the house. So that means all the galleries that we had been fortifying through that period of time, most of the mom-pop galleries crashed. And whoever didn't make the adjustment for technology with the internet and such, those businesses folded also. So we're in another revolution again. And it's technological now. Because when we were doing all of this hustling and grinding, there was no internet. There was no social network. And now we get that. That's what we feed off of now. You know, I had one guy ask me, he was being a skeptic. He says, well, is you work in any museums? And I said, well, no, my work is not in any museums. He says, well, you know, then you really haven't made it until you work in a museum. And I looked at him and squared his face and said, my work is in 350,000 homes. I would rather my work be in 350,000 homes than one museum. It's a different mindset altogether. Because again, remember, no matter how sophisticated you are in this audience, it wasn't designed for you to participate. That's the biggest key. That's why this is important. And while you're talking, there are revolutions happening even right now. Do you know how difficult it is for artists to show their works even on a cruise ship? If you don't know, start watching. This is one of the first times that we have been able to really dominate the hallways with our artwork, because people are pressing all the time to make sure you guys have access to this. So when you walk down the hall and you're just used to seeing it, that's fine. You know, at least enlighten your brothers and sisters so they can know what's happening. Because I'm going to tell you what's happening to us right now. When we started into this game, everybody was starving and hungry for their culture. Everybody. 25 years now has passed since then. So that it means there's a generation coming behind that. Okay? The generation coming behind that is not as hungry. And they've been, if you would have asked in the 80s how many people had artwork on their walls, 10 people, one person would say it. Now it's totally inverted. You'd be lucky if you could find one person that don't have artwork in the house. Okay? But what happens is we get jaded. Now if you don't know what jaded means, because I know all of us speak different languages. Remember when Obama went into office and how proud y'all felt? Yeah. Well, if you look at where you're at now, you may find you might be a little jaded because you've accepted that change, you've adapted to that change, and you're looking for what's forward. Well, the same thing happens with what we're doing. You know, so our job is not hard because the artists are everywhere. How connected are you to your culture is the question. You know, because when you come and listen to this music, same thing. If it wasn't for you guys, the whole smooth jazz format wouldn't exist. That's right. Because the jazz performers, y'all let them get away. Y'all wasn't ready. You appreciate them now, but at that time you didn't have the luxury of it. People outside of the country did. If it wasn't for their international support, they wouldn't have made it. We call them legends now. So we are in that same time. We still have a personal responsibility to uphold our culture. And whatever way you do that, through supporting things like this, whether supporting the artists or whoever you see, I mean, if y'all took all your cars, all your outfits, and your houses, and all those material things you have, and you divide them and make a pile of all the things that are culturally representative of who you are, you might find out where you really are.
Amen. He's talking about being the gatekeeper of culture. Now we're going to get into the value of the artwork, because while we're the gatekeepers of culture, we've also have years behind us that has allowed our artwork to have value, monetary value, and appreciative values. But before we go there, Charles, I want you to add on to what my brother was just talking about.
Okay, well, everything that we've spoke about so far is very relevant. But me, I came from a different understanding of my purpose, and I knew enough. They taught me enough in corporate America that there is no excuses for success. Regardless of what happens out there, what drives you to buy what you buy, there is a larger reason for that. So one of the things that we did, my company took a responsibility to educate. So we came up with this magazine called Images, which represented probably 3,000 or 4,000 self-validating artists throughout the country. And we did this magazine for 8 years. And the purpose of that where my contemporary peers would put ads in this magazine, and we would distribute it to all art lovers throughout the United States. When we finally folded, our prescription level was about 15,000 throughout the United States, and that's a good number of people who are dedicated to collecting art.